I had been asked to speak in Omaha, Nebraska. This was several years ago. And I'd flown in that morning and was dressed ready to speak at the downtown Marriott. And I was on the shuttle going from the airport to the Marriott. The only other two people on the shuttle with me was a mother and her senior in high school daughter. And I knew this because they were chatting, and the daughter was a nervous wreck. She had to meet with the admissions people for Creighton University. This was her college of choice. She was doing a campus visit, and she had an interview with the admissions people she was convinced she was going to do terribly at. And she was a nervous wreck, and the mother was trying to put her at ease, but it wasn't really working. So the driver of the shuttle caught ear of this, and he said to himself, I'm going to help this girl out. So he began pointing out the window as we drove all of the world-class tourist sites of Omaha, Nebraska. I did learn that there's a bridge in Omaha where you can stand in two states at the very same time. Well, when the driver realized this wasn't really working either, he went right at the source. He said, you know what? Those Creighton University people, don't worry a thing about them. He said, they're normal people. They put their pants on one leg at a time. They go to work. You're going to do great. He said, I bet you get great grades back at home. The mother was like, oh, she does. He said, and by the way, if they don't take you, if they don't admit you, they're fools. They're idiots. And they don't know what they're doing, and it's their loss. None of this was really landing. I was in the back of the bus doing my very best to keep my head down, look out the window, but I knew my turn was coming. He was glancing in the rearview mirror, and eventually we caught each other's gaze. He looked at the way I was dressed, and he just said simply, so what do you do? Well, being me, I sat up, and in my clearest voice, I said, I'm the director of admissions for Creighton University. And I leaned over to the young lady, and I went, good luck. Well, everybody on the shuttle had a big laugh. They knew right away I was joking. And the young lady kind of relaxed. You could see her whole posture change. And for the remainder of the ride, everybody was kind of at ease now. And by the time we reached the Marriott, we all got out. The driver got our bags onto the curb, and there was this awkward moment. And then we began hugging each other. Do great in the interview. You're going to be fantastic. High-fiving. Have a great speech. Great. It was really remarkable. I have a clicker here somewhere. There it is. The only wealth you keep forever is the wealth you give away. This is kind of an odd, counterintuitive way to begin in a room full of business leaders. This quote is from the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius in the 2nd century. Now, old Marcus, he ruled over the known world at the time. So this guy had armies and palaces and gold-plated toilets and a toga that probably cost more than my car. But even he understood that the only lasting things of value are not the things you can hoard and keep, but they're the things you give away. I have the privilege of speaking all over the world on the topic of generosity. It's a genuine privilege. And I love what I do. I mean, I love it. And that's a word that sometimes, especially in business crowds, the word love, when that gets tossed out, there's some shifting in the seats. There's some scratching of heads, especially if I'm speaking in front of an HR crowd. They're like, love? Did he say love? Get out Form 93. We're going to have to. There are a lot of people who think that love has no business in business. Well, I disagree. The people that I speak to, the most successful people in their arenas, and I don't care if it's sales or marketing or professional athletes, they all use the same language. They all say the same thing, and that is, I love what I do. I love my team. I love my guys. I love my job. Love is the language of champions. And now, let's be clear. I'm not talking about romantic, hand-holding, walks on the beach kind of love, right? The ancient Greeks learned long time ago that there are different types of love. It's not just one kind of love, right? There's philia love, the brotherly friendship type of love, right? And then, of course, there's eros love, the romantic, sexual kind of love. And since it's 8 o'clock in the morning, enough said about that. But then there's agape love. And I know that in a group full of Christian business leaders, this is something that many of you know a lot about. This is what the Greeks called the highest form of love. It's a servant, selfless kind of love. And it's something that we as business leaders need to talk a lot more about. Because in this environment, in this business culture that we're in, we're all looking for those edges. We're all looking for those little advantages. And agape love, generous love, is really the secret sauce here that we need to talk about. And it's not something that's just nice to have. It can be your secret weapon. Now, I'm a word guy. I love the language. I love writing and speaking, and I think words have just such power to move the spirit, move the soul. And so when I began speaking about generosity, I had to look more deeply into it. It turns out the word generosity as we know it comes from the Latin generasis, which means of noble birth. Well, that kind of stung me a little bit because I don't know about you, but my upbringing on the west side of Chicago was about as far from noble as you can get. And so this really troubled me. How can I reconcile generosity, noble birth, and the practical reality of my life? Well, I sought answers in all of the typical places, and I found one in the typical place, in Scripture. 1 Peter, he has given us a new birth into a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ, and into an inheritance that cannot perish and is kept in heaven for you. I've been baptized in Jesus Christ. Is there a more noble birth that is available to any of us? I think not. And so, I've been given so much through that baptism. And as Luke reminds us, to whom much is entrusted, much is expected. So how do we as business leaders, how do we as community leaders, church leaders, school leaders, family leaders, how do we respond to such a thing when we realize that we actually come from a noble birth? Well, one of my first jobs out of college, my very first job, was with Anheuser-Busch in Chicago. And I had a manager there, a guy named Mike Allaire. Now, Mike was right out of central casting for mid-level managers. He was a little bit thick around the middle. He was a little bit balding, but a great guy. And a guy who taught me a lot without even knowing it because I watched him. And every Friday, I watched Mike write 2 notes by hand and drop them on the desk of 2 of his team members. He had about 40 guys working for him. Now, these were simple notes. These were handwritten. Nice job on the call today. Well done. Thanks for being the calm in the chaos this week. Keep it up. Nothing more. He didn't send out an email blast saying, here are the 2 employees of the week. It was quiet. It was simple. It was personal. And I watched what those employees, and I was on the receiving end of several of those. And I watched what everybody in the office did. They kept those notes. Some of them taped them to their monitors. They kept them in their drawers. Those notes made them feel like they mattered. Those notes really hit home. We need to realize in this environment, in this job-hopping environment where employees are almost expected to move from job to job every 2 to 3 years, that every time they open up their LinkedIn, they're getting these, what I call green grass messages saying, come on over here. I got signing bonuses and I got great benefits. In this environment, we're losing people every day. And when we lose people, we lose capital. We lose real capital. And the answer to all of this is generous leadership. The poet Maya Angelou once said, people will forget what you did for them. People will forget what you said to them. But they will never forget how you made them feel. I do not know the names of the people on that shuttle bus. I don't know the names of that girl and her mother or that driver. I will never know how it turned out for her. I hope she graduated with honors. But it's years later, and I will never forget how they made me feel. We all looked up from our devices that day. We looked up from our cynical nature. And we looked into each other's eyes and souls, and we simply connected. We didn't write each other big checks. We didn't give each other fancy gifts. We were simply present with one another, and we gave each other the generosity of a shared spirit, a shared moment that years later, I'm certain they're talking about as well. Acts 20:35 talks about, well, Paul is quoting Jesus. And he tells the elders of the church in Ephesus, it is more blessed to give than to receive. Something we've all heard since we were children. Almost cliche. But it's important to realize Paul was talking to the leaders of the church. He wasn't talking to the people on the street. He wasn't talking to the members of the church, the rank and file, so to speak. He was talking to the elders. He was talking to all of us, the business leaders of that day, and reminding them what Jesus told. It is more blessed to give than to receive. And there's science behind it, and there's anecdotes behind it, and there's common sense behind it, and there's business results behind it as well. I lived for many years in Aliso Viejo, California. If any of you have been there, it's where God has done some of his best landscaping work. My mother was visiting, and we were sitting out on the patio on a warm summer day. We were sharing one of my famous fresh squeezed berry lemonades with the sugar on the rim and the sprig of mint. Oh, it's very good. And oh, by the way, made with the fresh lemons picked that day from the tree, the lemon tree in the back of our yard. It was really something. Now, my mother at the time was in the late stages of the disease that would ultimately take her life. And she had been struggling quite a bit, lamenting, why me, struggling with side effects. But on this day, there was a quietness about her, a stillness, a serenity. And I asked her about it. She said, I realized my grandchildren are watching. I realized that it's possible that this disease, while it's mine to go through, it's not for me, it's for them. I realized that they have the opportunity to watch how a woman of strong faith goes through some of the challenges that God entrusts her with. This was a remarkable revelation from a woman who is not prone to such things. And then she looked to the back of the yard and she said, it's like the tree. She said, the lemons of the lemon tree are not for the tree. They're for us, the passersby. The fruit of the fruit tree is never for the tree. The challenges that we go through, the experiences we go through, they're ours to deal with. How many people in here have struggled with cancer diagnoses or business challenges or personal bankruptcies or divorces or relationship losses? Loss and grief and strife, that's the connective tissue of humanity. The blessing of it is it allows us to know each other more deeply through those sufferings. And when we have the perspective that those experiences are not for us, God has entrusted us with them. They're ours to go through. But the fruit of those experiences are for all of those around us. Our team members, our family, our grandchildren, the passersby of our lives. Sometimes people will say, well, what's in it for me? Do I just produce fruit for other people? Do I get anything out of life? Yes, you do. You get the fulfillment of knowing that you can lead with confidence from experiencing those things. You get the joy of sharing those experiences and then being on the receiving end of others who will share with you theirs. People are watching us, our friends, our neighbors, our team members, our grandchildren. And the lesson we can offer them is that generosity is invincible. And by the way, I mentioned science before. Science backs all of this up, in case you didn't know. Stanford and Harvard did parallel studies on generous leadership. The results were incredible. Lower turnover rates for team members and employees who had generous leadership in their workplace, 67% more likely to stay put. 67%. Innovation rates went up more than 50%. This is because people felt secure. They felt safe in their place. Generous leadership. Safe to bring up concerns, safe to admit fault without fear of reprisal, being fired. Now, the world calls that psychological security. I call that grace. And just like agape love, I truly believe that grace has a very important place in business as well. But here's the lead. I buried the lead. Productivity went up more than 21%. 21% as a result of generous leadership. Those are real dollars and cents. Those are real productive numbers. The famed anthropologist Margaret Mead spent a lifetime studying cultures and tribes and peoples, civilizations. She was once asked on a panel discussion, how can you tell when a people are becoming civilized? How do you know when that tipping point is happening? Now, you might have expected her to say, well, when we see the use of tools or clay pots or the discovery of fire or something like that. She didn't. She said, when we see fossilized evidence of femur bones that have healed. A healed femur bone. Femur bone's a leg bone. In the wild, if you break your leg, you die. You can no longer hunt and gather food. You can no longer make it down to the river for water. You can't run away from predators. If you break your leg, you die, except if someone cares for you, if someone carries you to safety and protects you from predators, if someone brings you food and water long enough for your bone to heal so that you can now go and do that yourself, now you have civilization. The first sign of human civilization in this world is an act of generosity. When we take care of each other, when we extend ourselves, when we connect through generous leadership and spirit, we don't just express kindness. We're expressing our core humanity. And by the way, our Creator has designed us to respond chemically. The so-called happy hormones, serotonin, oxytocin, dopamine, flood our central nervous system when we do acts of generosity. God is literally and chemically imploring us, do that again. That was a good thing. You're going to feel good if you do that again. Simon Sinek is a famous writer and speaker, and he has a take on this. He said, think about the difference between if you leave a quarter at the 7-Eleven in the bucket on the counter, you're doing a nice act of generosity. But if you spend a weekend building homes in Habitat for Humanity, you're going to talk about that for a while. You're going to tell people what you did. You're going to feel differently. Those acts of service, those acts of generosity matter. And they're deeply rooted in how we were created. There is an old Rodgers and Hammerstein. We have some young people in the crowd who don't know who that is. There's an old Broadway musical called My Fair Lady. And Oscar Hammerstein wrote this lyric, a bell is not a bell until you ring it. A song is not a song until you sing it. And love in your heart wasn't put there to stay because love really isn't love until you give it away. It was a normal Sunday morning. My wife Kathy and I were driving home from church, and we had our 3 small children in the minivan with us, riding that Odyssey minivan down Rochester Road. I know what you're thinking. I didn't know he was doing that well. We got to our subdivision, and as we turned in, there on the front porch of one of our neighbors' homes, where it hadn't been just a few hours earlier, was now a red Igloo cooler. And it hit us like a ton of bricks. Because in our neighborhood, when someone is diagnosed with cancer, the neighbors all get together and organize meals for that family. But because chemo treatments can mean unusual sleep schedules, what they do is they put a red cooler on the front porch. and then they fill it up with that day's meals for the family. And that way the family can just eat whenever it's convenient for them without people knocking on their door. And it's really a lovely sentiment. And I just hated those red coolers. I thought they were awful. I thought all I could think about was the children who lived in that house and how they'd be riding their bikes down the street or playing in the front yard, and they'd have to be confronted with this symbol of death on their front porch every day, and I hated it. Well, Kathy, bless her heart, thought that I was the most cynical dog she'd ever heard of. She's horrible. How can you say that? But I just thought they were awful, and I told everybody I knew about it. And Kathy eventually, of course, took her turn making meals for that family and pretended that she didn't know me. But that's another story. About a year and a half later, Kathy herself started getting headaches. And they would come, and they were pretty bad, and then they'd go away, and then they'd come back, and they'd go away. And then they came, and they wouldn't go away. So we took her in for some tests, and they did a whole battery of tests, and then they did a whole round of scans. And then a tall man in a white coat took us into a small room. And he said the word glioblastoma, which basically means get your affairs in order. And 17 days after that, she died. About a week after her funeral, my friend Ed from across the street gave me a call on the phone. The only thing he said to me was, "Open your garage door." So I did. And there was Ed rolling a giant white deep freezer up our driveway. He rolled it right past me into our garage and plugged it into the wall. He said, "My friend, I know how you feel about those red coolers. So we got you this. And it'll be in your garage, out of sight, out of the way, for you." And I said, "Well, thank you, but I don't really have anything to put in it." He said, "I know, I've seen you cook." Over the next 3 hours, neighbors from all over stopped by and dropped off meals that were fully prepared, wrapped up with instructions on how to thaw them and cook them, and they filled that freezer to the brim. I had been slightly wrong about those red coolers. They weren't symbols of death. They were bright red beacons of hope and love. And my friend Ed, his simple act of friendship, reminded me that our secret weapon as human beings is our generosity to one another. He wasn't a guy delivering a freezer. He was a friend, and he was making me feel loved and known and like I mattered. Another person making me feel like I mattered. It was a remarkable, remarkable expression of love and of kindness and of generosity. Remember Maya Angelou, how I felt that day. I'll never forget how I felt. So, science and scripture, Broadway musicals and airport shuttles, little red coolers and beer belly businessmen, they're all telling the same story. They're all trying to implore us to do the same thing. They're reminding us that generosity is our superpower, and it has the ability to change everything and everyone around us. I think I'm okay on time. I'm okay. Where's the boss? We good? It's hard for me to come into a room like this speak about generosity and not share with you the story of Matt Kell. This is a man I've never met. I told you that I lost my wife, Kathy. In the aftermath of that, God put another woman in my path. And thanks be to God, Gina and I have now been married more years than, than we can count. We raised 5 children together. And Matt Kell was Gina's, thank you, sir. Obviously another man with a lot of kids. He has that 1,000-yard stare. Matt Kell was Gina's late husband. And as he, a man of extraordinary faith, who in his absence has taught me so much about life and about love and about generosity. In the closing weeks of his life, he realized that his 2 sons, at the time only 4 and 6 years old, were going to have to face a life that was very different. So he left behind for them video diaries, lessons in life from father to son. One of them I'm going to share with you today. And it is, in my opinion, the most extraordinary act of generosity I've ever witnessed.
The next person I want to talk about may or may not even exist, but your mom may remarry another man. And if she does that, I want you to know that I expect you to respect that man like you would have respected me. I don't ever want from your mouth to come that you're, to this man, that you're not my real dad. If mom respected somebody and loved somebody enough to marry them after I've passed away, I want you to expect that I love and respect that guy too. I know your mom's values, and if she remarries, she's going to remarry somebody that I approve of. So I want you to respect that man like he was me. He tells you to do something, you do it. You treat him with love, compassion, and you treat him like you would if I was still alive. I think enough said.
I was that man he was talking about. And I want you to consider the clarity of faith that is required to give these gifts to the people you love. Matt's 2 boys are now my sons. I've raised them from the time they were 4 and 6 years old. They're extraordinary young men, and it's been the privilege of my lifetime. When we go from this place, I pray that we will keep the face of Matt Kell close at heart, close on our mind. The clarity of faith, the clarity of love and generosity that is demonstrated in that short piece of tape is something that I hope you will etch on your spirit. As you begin to face whatever you face in the remainder of your day, it surely, prayerfully, hopefully, will not be life and death. But facing what Matt was facing, he leaned into Scripture. He leaned into what Christ commanded and taught. He leaned into generosity and lived up to his noble birth in ways that we all should aspire. So as we leave from this place, my prayer for all of us is that we can continue to be intentional, begin to look at life through a generous lens, and live up to our own most noble birth. Thank you. So in-laws are causing some stress within blended families.
So they married
Yes.
30 years ago.
Yes.
After they both lost their spouses within a 2-month period.
Right.
And with that, they're going through a struggle where the kids are just, even though they're grown, they're in their 40s, but there's a disruption happening. And I just wondered if you had any words of encouragement that you went through as a blended family on keeping together.
Every family's different. It's hard to express a template and say, just do these 3 things and off you go. Hopefully, everyone involved puts a priority on turning toward each other than turning away, turning toward God, toward His Word, than turning away. I was asking a pastor friend of mine, a deep biblical scholar, how can you discern between real love and, as my kids were moving into teenage years and they were wrestling with puppy love and all of those things, and I was asking him, and he said, real love connects. Real love does not separate you from your God, your family, your priorities, who you are. So if you're finding that it is disconnecting you, then that's discernment that this isn't right or righteous. If it's connecting you to each other, to Him in particular, then whatever surface level issues, those can be worked out. I'm sorry for what you're experiencing. I know it can be. We had a very, it was not an easy time, but it was an easier time because we actually let our children lead us. Our 5 children, Gina and I brought them together as friends, and if any of them had any issues with what we were doing, we would have never gotten married. So we allowed them to lead us. We did not sit them down and say, here's what we're doing, deal with it. It was they were our priority. And so that and I think that resonated throughout our sort of the next tiers, right? The aunts, uncles, and cousins and friends, because they all come with the package too. And I think they saw that the priority was bringing children together and bringing, God into the mix and connecting. I'm not sure that's very helpful, but yeah. Yes.
I just have a question for you.
Sure.
What you just said about, if I could get that and bottle that up as I'm explaining to my young adult, I would love that.
You want it bottled up. We have that in the lobby on the way out.
That was the perfect thing I wanted.
They're working on labels. It's a simple and it's biblical, and it's I can't claim it. It was Carl Gaelic, my dear pastor, who told me that one. So thank you. Yes.
My question is, how do you take this into the next generation?
Take what is
This whole message of love.
How do we take it into the next generation? Yeah. I think the next generation wants it more than ever. Yes. I think the next generation possibly could be the most generous-minded and instinctive generation we've ever seen. Some of it is stalled because they don't know what to do with that energy. So if nothing else, we need to just help them learn practical steps. Here's what you do with your handwrite some notes. Put the device down and stop texting me. Put a pen in your hand and send a note to your team members, to your mother, to your aunt, or to your neighbor, and drop it off and see the magic. It is, everyone in this room has been in these situations 1,000 times, and they hear things like, oh, it's your superpower. Oh, it's your... I'm sorry, generosity is magic. If you begin to look outside yourself and say, what can I do for this person? And I don't care, you heard some extreme examples in some of the stories I told about people, making life or death decisions and so forth. It doesn't have to be that. It can be a balding mid-manager guy on a Friday afternoon making a difference in his team member's day or week or weekend. So, first thing I would say, have faith in the next generation because they're fabulous. They get a bad rap, but they're great. They're inclined towards service and generosity. They might need a little map on how to get there. Yes?
I have a question for you, but just speaking of that, I have a 24-year-old who's in college, and I was visiting him yesterday, and he has a bulletin board above his computer, and on that are handwritten notes and postcards and things that people have dropped to him here and there, but
Yeah.
he sees that every day.
That's fabulous.
Just speaking to...
I personally believe, and I'll take your question in a second, but I think here's $1 million idea for anybody who's inclined out there. An app that turns texts into handwritten notes. I'm sure maybe it's out there. But if I could press a button and take some of the heartfelt texts that I've received from people and turn it into a handwritten note for myself, I would do it. Did you also have a question?
I just would like to get an update on New Day and where you guys are at with that.
New Day. So in the aftermath, thank you. In the aftermath of our losing our spouses, I lost Kathy and Gina lost Matt. We, even before we married, we created a nonprofit called New Day Foundation for Families. And it's our mission to serve families who are going through exactly what we went through. We provide emotional support. We provide financial services. We will take over their mortgage for a number of months. We will get them to and from treatment. We will fill their cupboards with food. We will help their kids stay in school. It's not glamorous work. We're not sending kids to Disney World. We're keeping the lights on. We pay their bills directly. We started 18 years ago at our kitchen table with two people who didn't know what we didn't know, and today it is a $2.5 million a year organization with a staff of 12. This is my wife, Gina, sitting over here. Little commercial. Last night was our annual Detroit Celebrity Lip Sync Battle. It's sort of our annual gala. For anybody who has not attended that, I strongly suggest you get on next year's list. 800 people, downtown Detroit. The most fun you'll ever have at a charity event. And so Gina was up quite late last night, but an extraordinary event. And it's foundationforfamilies.com is the website. Oh, .org. I had a late night too. Foundationforfamilies.org if you're interested, and I think it might be in the program as well. But thank you for that question. Yes.
As a father, I think you might be missing out on an opportunity to do your job of embarrassing what I think is your son by introducing him.
So, I've got a boy here. Thank you. My son Drew is here, and before we embarrass him with applause, Drew came into my life when he was 6 years old, and sat at my kitchen table. What? 7? Every father here knows what I'm going through. Drew came into my life when he was just a little squirt. And sat at my kitchen table for the very first time, and I'm sorry, just stole my heart. One of the funniest people I've ever known, and I think one of the most faithful servants of God. He looks exactly like his late father, and I know that sometimes that is blessing and sometimes that is an eye roll, because his father was beloved in this town, and he gets people coming up, old ladies pinching his cheek and wanting to tell him stories, but he's a good man about it, and it's not easy to show that piece of videotape in front of Matt's son, but he knows that it serves Jesus and the Great Commission, and so he gives permission for us to do it. It is his videotape, and it is him to whom Matt was speaking, and his brother Sam. And so anyway, with all of that, embarrass him with some applause. Drew? You can blame that man over at table one. Any last questions? Yes. We do. We live in Rochester. Yeah, born and raised in Chicago. On one of our visits to her parents up at Mullet Lake, my late wife Kathy and I were driving back to Chicago one afternoon, and she was waxing poetic about how beautiful it was, and I pulled the car over, and just like any good Chicago man, I looked her in the eye and I said, "I will never live in Michigan." Right? Many years later, we moved here, and I raised my family here. Been here now 24 years, and it's been the blessing of my life. And about 3 years ago, Drew will attest, we had a ceremony. I jumped on the Lions bandwagon and have left my Chicago Bears in the dust. Are we done?
Good. It's good.
All right. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Awesome.